Welcome to the Alisa Childers podcast, where we equip Christians to identify the core beliefs of historic Christianity, discern its counterfeits, and proclaim the gospel with clarity, kindness, and truth. And sometimes we proclaim the gospel and discern the counterfeits through satire and humor. And that's what today's conversation is all about. With Babylon Bee folks, we've got Kyle Mann and Joel Berry on to talk about their new book about surviving the apocalypse, whatever apocalypse it might be. It's all funny and it's silly and dumb. But we're here for it because we love Babylon Bee. I told them in the conversation how Babylon Bee, in many ways, keeps me sane. When you see something crazy happening in the world, and then you go on and see just the funny things that the Babylon Bee will have to say about it, the satire, the sarcasm. And we talked about that stuff. Like, as Christians, how do they approach the topic of satire? And how do they know when going too far is too far? And how do they keep those things in check? How do they, as Christians, think through how to engage with politics in our culture and thinking about affecting culture and culture making as Christians? We talked about big tech. We talked about their battles with censorship and quote unquote fact checking that actually got them banned from Twitter for several months before Elon Musk took over and kind of freed them from Twitter jail. And we talked about the California deepfake or anti-deepfake election laws that they are facing some litigation with that as well. So I love Babylon Bee. I know many people who listen to this podcast, you also love Babylon Bee. So you're going to love this conversation with Kyle Mann and Joel Berry. But before we get to that, I do want to let you know that we have our Austin Unshaken conference coming up. If you are anywhere in the area, we would love to have you come out. It's such a wonderful time of like-minded Christians coming together to hear from myself, Natasha Crane, and Frank Turek about a lot of the topics, a lot of the issues that many pastors are shy to talk about. A lot of Christians are shy to talk about these things. And we're going to talk about transgenderism, biblical sexuality and marriage, social justice ideologies, critical race theory, critical theory. And we're going to be talking about deconstruction and the Word of God being our authority as Christians who are living out our faith in these really chaotic times. So we would love to have you join us for that. Natasha Crane and I will be in about a month doing a Christmas live stream. We've kind of done that for the past couple of years. It's an official Unshaken Faith Christmas live stream where we'll take live questions from you, but we will also be sharing our 4 new dates for 2025. I'm so excited, you guys, about some of the places that we are bringing the Unshaken in conference in 2025. There are several places where we haven't been anywhere near those places yet, so we're very excited to come there. So be looking for announcements about our Christmas live stream that will be on this podcast feed and on this YouTube channel. And that'll be, again, with my friend Natasha Crane. So once we make announcements about that, you're going to want to mark your calendars. We've got some really good episodes of this podcast coming up that I can't wait for you to hear. I've got an interview with Scott Allen about words in our culture that have been redefined. And we're talking about biblical words, words that the Bible defines that have gotten redefined in our culture, and how that can allow progressivism to seep into our historic Christian biblical worldview. Such a good episode. Talked with Doug Groiteis about Blaise Pascal, maybe one of my favorite episodes, because I'm a church history nerd. I love to read the old dead guys. I've had podcasts about that. We love to read the old dead guys. And Blaise Pascal was a brilliant thinker who had a lot to say about faith and reason. He had a lot to say about just how, as Christians, we navigate or Orthodox theology. He dealt with people, the Jesuits, and a lot of what he said about the Jesuits could be applied to progressive Christianity today. Fascinating episode. Going to be talking with Ali Beth Stuckey about her amazing book that I endorsed called Toxic Empathy, and how progressives tend to co-opt Christian compassion to bring about progressive ideologies. A really important episode that you're not going to want to miss out on. Bethany and Ryan Baumberger, who are warriors in the pro-life cause, beautiful, awesome Christian people, are going to be on the podcast to talk about their ministry, their amazing, powerful story of a meeting, and Ryan's story of being conceived in rape but adopted in love. Beautiful story there. We got some great stuff coming up. So you are definitely going to want to subscribe wherever you're listening to these podcasts. And then for the month of December, we will be on sabbatical. We do this every year. It gives me a chance, my husband a chance to rest and recharge and come back in the new year with all new episodes and maybe a new set. So if you're watching on YouTube, some things are maybe going to change around here, and I can't wait to reveal where we're going in the new year with the podcast and the YouTube channel. So without any further ado, here is Kyle Mann and Joel Berry of the Babylon Bee. Well, I'm here with Kyle Mann and Joel Berry of the Babylon Bee. You guys, I am so thrilled to have you on the show because you keep me sane. Just so you know, you're like my daily dose of therapy. And I know that I speak for millions of people when I say that you're just our daily dose of sanity, of clarity, of humor and hope. So welcome on. So glad you're here.
Thanks for having
Thank
us.
you.
Well, let's start with you, Kyle. What connected you with the Babylon Bee? You've been there for a long time, kind of as a front person in a lot of the videos and all of that. So what connected you with them first?
Yeah, I started writing for the Babylon Bee the day the Babylon Bee launched in
Oh,
March of 2016. I wrote the headline, Holy Spirit Unable to Move Through Congregation as Fog Machine Breaks.
that's my
Um,
favorite, absolute all-time favorite Babylon Bee article. So thank you for that.
yeah, no problem. So I lucked out, providenced out, if you will, and I emailed Adam Ford, who had launched the site, and he needed writers. That article went viral, so I just wrote another one the next day and another one the next day. Eventually managed to, I became the head writer, and I quit my job, and now I'm running the site, and that's what I do full time. So I really lucked into it. I was in just the construction industry before this, and I was also the co-pastor of a small Southern Baptist church in San Diego. So it's like it was just definitely a God thing, if you want to call it that. But that I found this as my life's calling.
Did you ever think back in those days when you were writing those articles that you would eventually interview people like Elon Musk and have Elon Musk defending you guys and all of that, or was that just not
No,
even?
no, not at all. Like it's insane. And me and Adam thought it was going to be a part-time side project, and then all of a sudden it was like, what on earth is going on? And the day, like a few days after the site launched, we had just bought our first house, and I told my wife, I hated my job at the time, not the pastor thing, but the other thing. And I told my wife, I was like, maybe I could eventually quit and do this full time. And she's like, what is it? You're like writing like church jokes, and she just didn't get like, but she was so supportive, she's like, well, if it ever can pay the bills, then maybe.
Yeah. Now, what
That's
year was that?
pretty
What year was
crazy.
that it started?
It was March 2016, so right during the Trump Hillary showdown.
Yeah. And you know what's so interesting is, of course, I was following progressive Christianity, studying to really write the book I would end up writing about progressive Christianity. And I remember very specifically some of the progressive Christian thought leaders loved you guys in the very beginning because I think they thought they thought that you were making fun of all the fundies and you kind of make fun of everybody, which is why we love you. But then years later, I remember seeing a tweet from a progressive Christian thought leader that said, "Do yourself some good self-care today by unfollowing the Babylon Bee." How does that make you feel? God.
Self-care.
I
Uh,
highly recommend unfollowing the Babylon Bee for your mental health. Absolutely.
Well, Joel, how did you get connected with Babylon Bee?
well, ironically, it was initially through that headline that Kyle wrote, the Holy Spirit Fog Machine headline.
It's the
I was
one.
just scrolling through Facebook, read that headline, instant fan. I'm like, who are these guys? How is it possible that there's a funny Christian writer out there? And so I just started myself as a fan. Started submitting headlines and writing every once in a while, and I think over the course of the year, that turned in. I think Kyle called me at one point and said, "Well, I guess we might as well hire you since you're
Might
already
as
writing
well.
a lot for us. Might as well just throw you a bone and give you some money." So yeah, I started in 2019, and I'll never forget kind of when I first started to realize the progressive thought leaders in evangelicalism were peeling away from the Babylon Bee when Beth Moore responded to one of our headlines saying, "What on earth is wrong with you?" And
Wow.
I was like, "Oh boy, okay, there's something happening here. There's a great divorce happening within American
Yeah.
evangelicalism."
Did that surprise you from her?
Yeah, I remember. I mean, a lot of people. I mean, from like music artists that I grew up listening to, pastors that I grew up listening to. I mean, I was part of the kind of like the Young Restless Reform movement. I listened to Matt Chandler and Mark Driscoll and Tim Keller and John Piper and all these guys. And I remember initially just very startled by what was happening, very surprised by what was happening. I think
Yeah.
Trump kind of brought it out in a lot of people.
Yeah, he did. And we're going to talk about satire today. We're going to talk about big tech, censorship, fact checkers, and how you guys have navigated a lot of that stuff. But I want to just let you know also, Kyle, about that article that we keep referencing about the Holy Spirit waiting in the lobby. I do have to say, like, as I think through things like satire and sarcasm, I struggle with it sometimes myself. I don't really do a lot of it. I don't know, maybe a different calling, different sort of thing. I love that you guys do it, and I love reading you. But there's also what I can acknowledge is that there is a very good theological outcome sometimes from satire, because I remember reading that and thinking it was hilarious, but also feeling a little bit convicted. Like, is that kind of like what I think? I was raised very charismatic, so I think I was approaching worship a bit that way. And it actually was the first thing I ever read that challenged me to maybe think through what I think I'm doing when I worship. Was that article that was so funny, and but ultimately kind of sent me on a journey of rethinking some things theologically. And I think that your work has the potential to do that. And you got a new book coming out called The Babylon Bee Guide to the Apocalypse: How to Survive All the Possible World-Ending Scenarios from Artificial Intelligence to Zombies. So, Kyle, what is this book about, and why'd you guys write it?
Well, you said it all. Yeah, we, you hit on it too in your discussion on in your comments on the Fog Machine article, is that satire has this power to make us think a little bit, and it's I think our approach in the book is kind of twofold. We want to just make people laugh on the one hand. I think as and I'm sorry, I'm going to go on a little bit of a side here, but as Protestants especially, like, I think there's a lot of like hardcore reformed folk that we kind of frown on the arts, and we kind of frown on comedy in a way, like, oh, that's something that libs do, you know.
Right.
And that's something the goofy charismatics are into, that, and they like ribbon dance in church or whatever. And so I went
And
to a
they
church
do.
once where they had, yeah, I went to a church once where they had, the painter that's like painting during the sermon, and yeah, so they're like, they're all into that, frou-frou stuff, and we kind of like, oh yeah, that's not for us. Like, we're into theology and study and truth, and it's like, that's good, that's a good thing, but at the same time, like, God created the arts, and God created comedy. It's not this liberal thing that we're like stealing from the libs or taking from Satan or something. It's like God created it, and then the
They
left
stole from
co-opted it.
us.
And what was that?
They stole from
Yeah.
us.
Exactly. And so there's a sense in which we're reclaiming that. So, long story short, I think it's a good thing to have a book on your coffee table that has stick figures that are getting blown up by mushroom clouds, because I think that's just a funny thing, and that's a good in itself. And then the other part of it is that when we're making fun of something like the end of the world, what we're doing is we're making fun of this constant fear and anxiety that even Christians have a lot of times, even though we know that God is sovereign and He's in control of all creation. We don't have to worry about what political party's in charge, even though that can be an important thing and an important thing to fight for. At the same time, it's like God's in control, and so to be able to joke about that takes the power, the power that it has to control our lives away. And so there's a sense in which it deflates that anxiety. So both of those things, but mostly just funny stick figures.
Let's talk about the phrase fair trade. It's actually a scam that keeps farmers stuck in poverty. This is one of the reasons I love 7 Weeks Coffee, and that's because they use direct trade sourcing, which allows for unmatched quality control and helps create prospering local economies, supporting farmers in Haiti, the Dominican Republic, Honduras, Brazil, Colombia, and Ethiopia. Mainstream coffee companies can't tell you who grows their coffee, but 7 Weeks can because they personally know all their farmers. But that's not all. The coffee is amazing. It's mold-free, pesticide-free, shade-grown, low acid, the absolute best quality coffee that I've ever had. But they're also on a mission to fund the pro-life movement one cup of coffee at a time. To date, they've saved over 5,000 lives and raised $500,000 that they've given to pro-life resource pregnancy centers all across the country. This is a no-brainer. Christmas is coming up. It's a perfect gift. Go to 7weekscoffee.com and use my code Alisa to get up to 25% off. Again, 7 Weeks Coffee, use my code Alisa.
Is the answer.
Joel, anything you'd add to that, Joel?
Yeah, no, I emphasis on the stick figures. This is definitely the dumbest thing we've ever written. I don't want to. I don't want to, like, you know, deceive your audience into thinking this is any deeper than it is. It is really, really silly. But yeah, everyone is fearful right now. No matter who wins in the next election, half the country is going to think it's the end of the world. And so in the book, we play with both sides a little bit. We talk a lot about leftist end of the world scenarios, from climate change and MAGA insurrectionist takeovers, to stuff that we think about, like communism and the rapture and things like that. So no matter who you are, no matter what your political persuasion, we all kind of have these fears and anxieties, and it is really fun to just kind of like laugh in their face a little bit.
Yeah, and to your point, Kyle, about art and the arts and Christians influencing culture that way. I mean, of course, you guys have seen Matt Walsh's "Am I Racist?" And I remember going to the theater, and I just really thought that was so powerful. I loved it, absolutely loved it. And then I kind of followed some of his videos where he was defending himself when Christians were saying, "Hey, you used deception. You shouldn't have done this." And his point was that like, if we're going to actually change culture, we have to do real art. Like, we have to do things that aren't just cheesy, but things that actually are changing culture. And I think that movie and the work that you guys do illustrates that when you take advantage of these artistic tools that God has given us, these minds, the humor, the sarcasm, satire, all these things, it can actually influence and change culture, which I think you guys have done quite a bit. I do want to talk about satire. Talk about satire a bit and why that seems to be, obviously the main vehicle through which you guys really do promote and communicate some important theological, political, ethical messages.
Yeah. Satire is by definition, it's a cutting tool, right? So it not only skewers things and stabs things and pokes things and takes down bad ideas, which I think is a huge part of it, but it also separates. Like that fog machine article we keep going back to, like, the point of that isn't to say that the Holy Spirit doesn't move or that times of worship can't be real. The point of that is to separate a lot of our assumptions about, like, what factors need to be in place, or our traditions about what worship looks like. And it helps kind of deflate that thing. So you're like, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, that part is kind of this dross that's built up over the years on top of what true worship of God looks like. And then you can kind of separate that out without being too, like, I don't know, without being too judgmental, even, because it's like you said, you were kind of in a place where that was kind of your background, and it doesn't offend you in that when you encounter it in the wrapper of humor and satire, because you're like, oh, that's funny, that's what I do. And then all of a sudden your guard's down and you're like, oh, well, wait a minute, that does kind of speak to something. So when we're making fun of Christians, that's always a delicate thing, but we're not making fun of the core belief or the gospel. We're making fun of the ways that we fail to live up to what the scriptures say, or the traditions that we've built on top of it, and it helps us to kind of cut those things down to size.
Joel, anything you'd add?
Yeah, comedy is kind of I know deconstruction is kind of a dirty word right now, but, or a loaded word, if you will, but that's part of its role, is to deconstruct things that we have, um, whether they be idols, sacred cows, prejudices and assumptions that we've had. That's part of its role. Comedy picks things apart, takes things apart, and what you'll see with a lot of secular comics is that's kind of where they end. Is they'll kind of point out the absurdity of something, and then they just kind of leave you there. And well, that's absurd. Everyone go home. And the B's kind of trying to do something a little more than that. And we're trying to point to the truth beyond that thing that we're deconstructing, and hopefully point people to Christ in a unique and funny way.
Yeah, I'll just add on to that too. And sorry if we're rambling a little, but the Chesterton wrote that he felt that all true satire was conservative, which is interesting when you think about how the left has used satire and comedy so much. But Chesterton pointed out that satire, by its very nature, points to a standard of truth. Like when he's like when Voltaire was writing, what he was doing was saying, there's here's the bad ways that our politicians are behaving, or here's the bad things that are going on. And you're just pointing to an objective truth that therefore they should be behaving this way. You have to have a standard that you're trying to reflect if you're writing satire. And so, like what Joel was saying, you read a lot of liberal satire these days on The Onion, or you watch Saturday Night Live or late night, and it's all just like everything is bad. Or you go to a stand-up comedy show and it's like, oh, this is stupid, or whatever. You just make fun of everything, and then there's nothing else. There's nothing left. It's so empty. There's nothing to hold up as the thing that you're pointing to. And C.S. Lewis said at the end of Abolition of Man, that like the whole point of seeing through something is to see something through it. And to go on seeing through things forever is the same as not to see. So it's like if you just keep deconstructing everything, you end up in this place of despair. And I tweeted some screenshots of some Onion articles, I don't know, a year or two ago, and I'm like, are the guys at the Onion okay? Like, someone should check in on them, because all their satire is like, oh, I'm so sad at work, man sad at work, or man sad at home, or everything's terrible. Politics are, it's like, if everything's awful, if you're satirizing everything and everything's awful, you're just left in this place of total despair. And it's cool at the B that we have like something that we can actually point to, which I think is neat.
Yeah. Yeah, and you do it so well. What's your standard for like getting together and saying, yeah, this one might be going a little too far? Or do you ever have those discussions where you're like, you have this great idea, but you're like, yeah, I don't know if we can do that?
Yeah, I always have things that I'm pitching to Kyle, and he graciously tells me, this is Kyle's nice way of shooting me down. He says, I'd be okay if we would not publish that. That's his way of saying that joke is
So Kyle's the
terrible.
standard.
Kyle created the voice of the bee. We're all just imitating it. But I think one of the most important standards is that if it is on the edge, if it is going to make a few people mad or ruffle some feathers, it has to be worth it. It has to be really funny, and it has to be making an important point. So, we don't want to like trigger people for the sake of triggering people.
Yeah.
We kind of make that judgment call. Is it worth it? I think is the big question we're asking.
Yeah, my daughter doesn't have social media on her phone, but her favorite thing to do is to steal my phone and go on my Instagram and just read all of the Babylon Bee headlines and that's the other thing too. I hope you guys know that because of I guess the cool factor of the humor and the branding and everything that you're doing, it really is appealing to the younger generation who looks out and sees the chaos in their culture. And you guys are one of those voices that they can look to and go, okay, I'm not crazy. Like what I'm seeing is real, and it is really stupid, and it doesn't work. And so I really appreciate that about what you guys do. So I remember back, I think when I was still on Twitter, I've been off Twitter for a while now for my mental health. But I do remember when I was on Twitter, and this was before Elon took over, and you guys got banned. That was like that was kind of crazy. How long were you banned on well, I guess before it was X, when it was Twitter?
We were off Twitter for about 8 months. That we were
Okay.
locked out of our account. Yeah, and it was a locked out of our account unless we deleted the offending tweet, was the ultimatum that we were given. So we decided not to, and then we were off Twitter for 8 months until Elon walked in the door and said, "Free the Babylon Bee."
That's right. I remember that. And that was very cool. I was glad you guys stuck to your guns on that, because so much of this, quote unquote, fact checking that we're seeing in our culture and the influence of big tech, mainstream media. I mean, you guys are kind of facing a lot of giants, a lot of Goliaths in this world. And I'd love for you to talk about that a little bit. What are some of the censorship challenges, maybe as you have specifically encountered them? And how do you typically deal with something like that? If you're anything like me, you want nothing more than to give your kids a biblical worldview. And we can't give them a biblical worldview unless we give them the Bible. So we prepare our lessons, we teach them what the Bible says and what it means, but sometimes we forget to teach them how to study the Bible for themselves. This is where Foundation Worldview curriculum will come alongside you as a Christian parent to give your kid the tools they need to learn how to study the Bible for themselves. Their Studying the Bible curriculum features 10 lessons that help kids grasp the major periods in Bible history. This gives them an overarching view of the grand story of the Bible. Then there's 10 lessons focused on basic Bible study skills, reading verses in context, figuring out what's prescriptive, what's descriptive, and those types of things. And then there's 10 lessons talking about biblical genres, because different books of the Bible are written in different genres. And these materials will set kids on the trajectory of seeking God through his word all their lives. Check it out. Go to foundationworldview.com. Use my code Alisa to receive 10% off of any family license. Again, that's foundationworldview.com. Use my code Alisa.
Well, yeah, originally, the censorship was pretty overt and really kind of ham-fisted and funny. So our first kind of opposition came from Facebook when they partnered with Snopes, and Snopes was fact-checking our articles all the time, which was really funny.
That's funny in and of
And
itself, right?
yeah, it gave us a ton of material and a lot to laugh at. We told a lot of Snopes jokes in those years. But then, those fact checks then get fed back into Facebook's algorithm, and they kind of use that algorithm to invisibly suppress us. And that's a lot of what we're seeing now, is as opposed to like the, banning, suspending stuff that is going to get attention. A lot of these big tech companies, they just will kind of suppress your reach invisibly in a way that you really can't prove or put your finger on. And so that kind of stuff is a little bit harder to fight against sometimes.
And who are the fact checkers? Like, other than Snopes, or like, what's behind all of this?
Yeah, we've been fact checked by Snopes, USA Today, the Associated Press, PolitiFact, like you name the media outlet, and we've been fact checked by them. So and it's like this cabal, it's this fact checking cabal where it's like the social media site wants to ban you, but they don't have a reason to, so they go and they send it over to Snopes and they say, hey, can you fact check this article that the Babylon, and then they fact check it. Even it's the dumbest thing too, like you wouldn't believe. We had one where it was like uh the Ninth Circuit Court overturns Ruth Bader Ginsburg's death, and it got fact checked by USA Today, and there's like like they wrote 1,000-word article on disproving and debunking this article, and then you get a notification from Facebook saying, "Hey, a story that you shared isn't true. Like your account is now subject to suppression, and you won't be seen in as many people's feeds." So it's like this circular thing where they're all kind of, and then like Joel, maybe you can correct me on this, but I think like Facebook actually was paying them to do it. Like, weren't they
Yeah,
funding
Facebook
that?
had a grant. They were funding all of these fact checks, and so what just to get the money, a lot of these press associations would just like outsource it to some low level grunt intern, you know, with nothing better to do, just to rake in the Facebook money.
Yeah.
And so it was a very kind of a circular. I called it censorship laundering, because that's really, it seemed like they
Mm,
wanted to censor us and they needed a reason to do it.
And and it's not even like, a few years ago you'd call us conspiracy theorists for talking about this, but it's not even a conspiracy theory now. Like
right.
Mark Zuckerberg is coming out like, oh yeah, the Biden administration told us to delete stuff, so we did. Like it's
Yeah.
not it's not even a conspiracy theory. They're just coming out and saying it. And then even when the Twitter files were released after Elon bought Twitter, like the Babylon Bee had jokes that were flagged by, I don't remember if it was CIA, FBI, NSA, or just the
Wow.
Biden administration or whatever. But like
They
were
flagged one of our
flagged as,
T-shirts. Our
yeah, we had a
identify
T-shirt.
I identify as vaccinated T-shirt. That ended us up on a watch list.
Yeah,
Wow. You guys are
isn't
big
that crazy?
stuff. You're pretty powerful.
Yes.
That's amazing. Well, it's okay. The thing about it is, it's astonishing to me how even a grunt intern wouldn't know that this is a joke, that you're joking? Or do they know you're joking and they're just trying to shut you down, so they use the fact-checking ruse to do that? What do you think?
I mean, it's a combination. There's definitely a sense in which they were just super heavy-handed on censorship from the 2020 election on. Where any political thing is just suppressed, and you can't. I mean, you've probably seen it. You can't share a link anymore on Facebook and get anybody to share it or see it. So there's that element where it's just in general, social media sites are just suppressing links, and you can't get anything to get shared. I mean, at the same time, you can't look at stuff like that and deny really that there is a sinister motive there, where like they figured out that conservatives are actually writing decent comedy and it's getting shared, and we need to do something about this.
Yeah.
And you can just observe that in the way that that Snopes talked about the Onion back in the Onion's heyday. Anytime they would fact check an Onion joke because people got fooled by it, it was like, oh, silly people. Obviously, it's the Onion. And then when we did it, like they literally used phrases like the Babylon Bee is intentionally muddying the waters of current events to spread disinformation. Like we're doing the exact same thing the Onion is doing on the other side, except we're funnier. And
For sure.
and we're like, and we're a threat to democracy. Like I don't know how you can look at those two examples and not come away with the idea that there was definitely something ideologically driven there.
Hmm.
I think there was
Uh,
some jealousy there too, because I remember the New York Times raising the alarm that I think 2 or 3 of our articles one week had been the most shared articles on the internet, like above CNN and New York Times.
wow.
And so they were kind of like, what's the Babylon Bee doing here? This isn't good. Got to shut these guys
Yeah,
down.
and then there was that CNN guy, Donnie O'Sullivan, that was like, he shared an ex-CIA agent tweeted like the Babylon Bee is starting to fool people. It's misinformation. And then this CNN reporter shared it, and he was like upset that the Babylon Bee article on a specific news event had been read more times than the CNN article on the same topic. Like, so that's a threat to democracy, which
Yeah.
isn't hard to do. I mean, it's CNN, but
Yeah. And a lot of this comes down to free speech, and which, people nowadays is, hate speech is just speech you hate. It's just things you don't like that people are saying. But it seems like a lot of name calling, like Christian nationalist, conspiracy theorist, oh gosh, what are some of the other ones that people always use? I mean, you guys get called all of those things. Talk about conspiracy theories, because I think there really genuinely are some conspiracy theories that are not true, and people get really caught up into some of that stuff. But some of the stuff that happened over the past, especially 5 years, like you guys are mentioning, where you're getting fact checked, they're suppressing certain things. You're seeing those algorithms change, and then some of these quote unquote conspiracy theories get proven to be true, and yet nobody acknowledges it at that point. And so, I mean, how do you guys navigate some of that stuff? Because even just the virus coming from China, that was like considered a conspiracy theorist until it was proven true. And I mean, how do you navigate those kind of questions?
That's one of the lovely things about the bee, I think, is that you can kind of play with conspiracy theories or what is thought to be a conspiracy theory, but do it in a joking way that's not going to get you in too much trouble. It was really fun early on. You bring up that example of the virus coming from the lab in China. Before anyone was allowed to say anything about that, when it was like forbidden to talk that way, the Babylon Bee was making jokes about the virus coming from a lab in China, and it's just when you can kind of do it in a humorous way. I think it breaks the ice for people to talk about it in a more serious way. So it's just really fun to be able to kind of break that ice.
And you guys have been talking about the California anti-deep fake election laws. I don't even know what that is. What is that, and why are you against it?
yeah, Governor Newsom shared a parody ad that was made about Kamala Harris. And the person who made this parody ad, it was a very typical parody where you pretend like the person is dryly saying things that they didn't actually say because you're making fun of them, like, oh, I'm Kamala Harris and I'm an idiot. Like it was
Right.
that kind. It was to me, it was, at least it was very obviously parody. Um, but they used AI to replicate her voice. So he shared it on Twitter and said, or on X, and he said, this should be illegal. And then a few months later, he signed a bill into law making it illegal. So you can't, and it's a bizarre mishmash. There were three different laws. It's a bizarre mishmash of things. But basically, it's, you can't release anything that contains materially deceptive content about an election or a politician that's running in an election. And it's like really unclear what that means. Like, what is materially deceptive? And then they're like, you have to put labels all over it. This is fake. This is fake, which ruins any joke that you were trying to make. So, of course, our response to the Babylon Bee was we immediately made a parody video of Gavin Newsom and released it and then sued him.
How's that going?
It's moving along. It's moving along slowly, but all positive developments. It's all mostly little technical things that have happened in the court at this point, but they basically, I believe at this point, have ruled that like a preliminary injunction where the state can't enforce it against us while the case is ongoing. So I think that's either been handed down or is being worked on. So it's going well, and it hasn't obviously gotten to court yet. But ADF, Alliance Defending Freedom, is supporting us and filing those documents for us. So that's been great to have them on our side.
I went to the grocery store the other day and it felt so good to completely skip the meat aisle. And that's because almost all the meat that we eat in our home now comes from goodranchers.com. I love Good Ranchers because I know that the meat I'm buying is born, raised, and harvested right here in America. Did you know at the grocery store they can put a little sticker on the meat that says it's from America if it was simply packaged in America, but it doesn't have to have been born or raised or harvested here. That's why I love the transparency of Good Ranchers. Their meats have no antibiotics, hormones, or seed oils. This is steakhouse quality. It saves time and money. All of the cuts are pre-trimmed, which makes meal prep so easy. We absolutely love it. Right now, they're having their presidential promo where you can choose a free add-on for the next 4 years. You can choose between boneless chicken breasts, Angus ground beef, Applewood smoked bacon, or wild-caught salmon. Plus, with my special code Alisa, you're going to get $25 extra off your first box and free express shipping. Check it out today. Go to goodranchers.com. Use my code Alisa for that presidential promo add-on for 4 years plus $25 off and free shipping. Goodranchers.com, American meat delivered. Anything you want to add there, Joel?
Yeah, it's just weird to be in this position where you're trying to tell jokes, but you're also fighting this other battle on another front where you're fighting for your right to tell jokes, and you're suing people and and getting sued and all this stuff. It's just this weird thing, but it's fun. We're thankful for our owner Seth. He loves a good fight, so it's
Yeah.
good to have him in our corner.
Well, I want to ask you both to answer this because there could be people listening to us or watching us thinking, gosh, guys, we're Christians, you know? You both are professing Christians. We shouldn't be suing people. We shouldn't be, putting up this kind of a fight. I'd love to hear each of your perspectives as a Christian, why you think these types of fights are important.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think like touching on what Joel said. Like this was never a fight that we intended to be a part of, and I think you see that with a lot of the people that are standing up now. Like we didn't like, you look at somebody like Riley Gaines, who's out there like fighting for the rights of women, and it's like she didn't go to college and be like, oh, I want to become this conservative activist, and this is all I want to talk about all the time, and then people get on the left get mad at her, and they're like, why are you talking about this all the time? She's like, I was in a dressing room with a dude. Like
Yeah.
that happened to me, and I stood up and said no. And and so there's a sense in which like I'm not super political myself, and I don't want to fight this battle. Like I wanted to write jokes on the internet. Like we wanted to just have some fun, put some good stuff out in the world. But there comes a time, I think, that God calls each of us, that hey, like if you don't stand up now, um, there's not going to be an opportunity, especially when you're talking about the right to speak your mind. Like if we don't stand up for that now, you're not going to have that right, and then you won't be able to fight at all. So I always look at us as like kind of these accidental free speech champions because we were just writing jokes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's kind of this, I think, strain in American evangelicalism, especially now, that's almost, it's kind of like pietistic. I almost call them functional Gnosticism, where they kind of want to keep their faith in this nice little pristine container, separated from everything, and they can maybe take it out and look at it and admire it every once in a while. But something happens when you take your faith and you put it into action in the real world, in politics, in culture. It's necessarily going to become messy. It's necessarily going to become a fight. Your own hypocrisies and imperfections are going to be exposed, and that's a scary thing, especially for Christians who want to look squeaky clean to the world, you know. And so, that's part of being salt and light. You know, we're doing our best to use the talents that God has given us, to fight the battle that we've found ourselves in. And you know, what else can you do?
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you guys personally because, for a long time, I sort of tried to do that. I think I tried to keep all of my analysis of progressive Christianity just in the theological bucket. And if it kind of went outside that, I just wouldn't really comment on that. And then over the past few years, I started to realize there are some things that if I'm going to only do that, if I'm going to only keep my commentary on progressive Christianity, for example, or deconstruction or whatever it is, just in theological terms, if I'm only keeping it there, then there's a lot that I'm not going to be able to say. And the progressives that are trying, they're eking into the church and into culture would be very happy for me to just analyze it theologically as they completely come in with the political angle and the ethical angle and the cultural angle. So I so appreciate what you guys are doing. And I'd love to ask you about Christians and politics because that's such a hot button topic right now. If you it seems to me like if you engage at all, you're called a Christian nationalist, you're even called a racist, and you guys have been called all of those things. But I'd love to ask each of you, and maybe Joel, you can start, is how do you think Christians should engage in talking about politics in the public square? How should we go about doing that?
Yeah, I think there's this kind of this false choice, or this, I guess, this bias that Christians have, and I think part of it's due to the teaching that we've received in a lot of our churches for the last 20 years. That, and it goes something like this. You know, okay, um, you know, God's kingdom is not of this world. Um, you know, we're we shouldn't worship power, and therefore, anything that you do politically, um, to either, you know achieve political power, or try to get a political win, it shows that you're not trusting in God, or you're living for the earthly power. um and th- the way I see it is that, you know Christians are meant to be in the world, and we're meant to be salt and light. And our presence here is supposed to have a very real impact on the world around us. We don't do this for selfish reasons, to try to gain power for ourselves. We do this, to echo what a lot of progressive Christians say. We do this because we love our neighbor. Good
Hmm.
policy, good political policy is good for our neighbor. Good immigration policy is good for our neighbor. Good tax policy is good for our neighbor. And so, no need for Christians to be shy about that. And the other thing too, that in a very unique position as Americans, being able to choose our leaders. We have been given governmental authority, and Romans 13 says that all authority is established by God. Therefore, we as American citizens are the God established authority, and we have been entrusted with the future of this country. And so, to kind of abdicate that responsibility, throw your vote away, say it doesn't matter, God's kingdom is not of this world. That's being a bad steward of a role that God has, for one reason or another, sovereignly placed you in. And so, yeah, I push back against that bias that a lot of Christians have, that it's politics, it's icky, stay away. No,
Yeah,
this is
yeah,
this is the world we live in.
yeah. Kyle.
I I personally think that if you're a Christian and you engage in politics, you're a Christian nationalist if you're a conservative, but it's okay if you're progressive, then that's
Oh,
totally
yeah.
fine.
Yeah, that's for sure the way it is. Like, Kamala
I mean,
was just at a big church, right? Where she's walking in
right.
during the worship and praise and worship, and that's not Christian nationalism.
Yeah, I don't understand. Like, I mean, I sympathize with the people that are a little gun shy about politics in the church. Like, I don't really want my pastor to necessarily talk about this proposition or that proposition, or this candidate or that candidate. Now, there are exceptions, obviously, if there's like, sometimes there's very evil propositions, especially with regards to abortion. And that may be an exception, but typically I don't want us to be engaged in that way necessarily in the formal, local church. But the people that I always have such a huge problem with that, and they're like, tax the churches, you know, like Kamala goes to a church and speaks, it's fine. If a church is all about social justice, that's fine. That kind of politics is okay. It's just your kind of politics that's
Right.
dangerous. So that's always weird. That's always weird to me.
Yeah. Well, and that is the bizarre thing about the whole Christian nationalist narrative. I think it was, gosh, who was it I think it was Neil Shenvi who pointed out how, by the definition of Christian nationalists that some of these books have that have been published to warn people about it, it's really a lot of the progressive churches are by definition Christian nationalists, but they just don't get called that. It's such a double standard. So with big tech and legacy media and all these things, where do you see this all trending? What do you think's going to happen in the next 5 years?
I always say I just write jokes on the internet. I don't really know.
You're
Um,
not a prophet.
although, although I don't know, a lot of our jokes come true, So I like like I see signs of hope and I see signs of doom at the same time. And as comedians, it's like you always ride that line, um, where you're kind of poking at a little bit of both of those things. I do see more. I guess I would say I see more signs of hope now, when it comes to censorship and the internet than there was a year ago, 2 years ago. I mean, Elon Musk bought, um, uh, one of the biggest social media platforms in the world specifically so that there would be free speech, and he's, for the most part, like, delivered on that promise. That's pretty cool. And you think about some of the stories that have come out about Kamala and Biden and the Biden administration over the past couple of years, and it's like, would those have been seen by anybody if
Right.
Twitter was still running the show? And probably not. So that's a good sign, I think. And oh, one other thing, like, Mark Zuckerberg seems to be, I don't know what he's doing, but he seems to be like eating meat and lifting weights and being a little bit more, being a little bit
Based.
more based, So who knows? Who knows?
Yeah. Which one of your jokes what has come true? What did you kind of joke about and then it happened in reality?
Oh, there's tons of them, tons of
Hundreds.
them. But what was there was that most recent one where we said something like Democrats wondering if they can maybe go back to more coherent Joe Biden. I think we did that one right after right after Kamala got nominated. And um, and then what was it, Joel? Like an Axios op-ed, or I don't
Yeah,
one of
yeah,
those
an
leftist
article
sites.
saying that Democrats are kind of inwardly, like, deliberating with each other, like, maybe Joe Biden is the better candidate or something like that. Uh,
Man, I'll tell you. How about
that's
what are
great.
some other ones that have come true?
The one that always gets a good laugh is we did the one that, like, people that still wear masks are probably just super ugly. And then that actually came out like 2 years later. A study came out saying that people that still wear masks are more likely to find themselves unattractive.
Really? Oh, that's so sad.
That's so sad.
That's so
It's
sad.
sad. It's sad, but
My
it is funny.
my favorite one was the one we did about Gavin Newsom being the U-Haul salesperson of the year, and, I think a little bit later that year, they ran a story where California had run out of U-Hauls because so many people were leaving the state.
Oh, man, and they're all coming here to Tennessee. Our church grew like tripled over like 2 years, and our pastor said it's all California people. They're all coming to Tennessee. You guys are still in
That's why I
California,
live in
though.
Ohio. No one's
Oh,
coming
you
to
live in Ohio.
Ohio.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm in California. I'm sticking around for the material, uh, for all the joke material. But
Yeah.
Gonna go down with the ship.
um,
One of
yeah,
the great joke materials you guys had this really funny article because it was a commentary on all the homeless problem in California, and you said there was like this big rain, and you said homeless people now commencing their job of repooping the streets. Do you you remember that one?
It's a
So
great
my
word.
daughter thought that was so hilarious, and then I actually took her to California, and I drove her down some streets where there were homeless encampments everywhere, and she was like, "It's true. What the Babylon Bee says is actually true." And yeah, so she got to see that with her eyes. As we kind of come to a close here, I want to ask each of you, what is your absolute favorite, either article, headline, skit, short video, podcast episode that Babylon Bee has ever produced? And you can, if you have to pick two, you can pick two.
Yeah, I always have trouble thinking of one because it's such a flood, and we live in it and we swim in it and breathe it in.
They
But
blend into each other.
yeah, but my one of my favorites, um, which is kind of niche, but we did one that was like a list, and it was like 5 signs that your husband is secretly looking at um, pictures of World War II planes on the internet. And there's always, I'll pause for laughter, but
I'll always give
there's
you laughter.
always, there's always, I love stuff like that, that you glance at it, you squint at it, you're like, is that making a point or not? Or is it just funny? I don't know. Why is it funny? And those are the kind of like little niche articles where you're like, you get like, what audience were you writing this for? But then I'll be at conferences and stuff, and people will come up and like, that's my favorite article, or like, my husband does this, he looks at World War II planes on the internet all day, and I sent him this article, we shared it in our group. So I love stuff like that, that's like, you'll see it out in the wild, like random pages sharing it, they don't even know we're like a conservative Christian satire site, because it's just speaking to something out there
Oh,
in
that's
pop
great.
culture that a lot of guys connect with. You.
How about you, Joel?
Well, I guess I'll give you two. The first one you probably have never heard of because no one clicked on it, but it's very early, a fake op-ed by Rob Bell that endeared me to the Babylon Bee early on. And the title of the
What?
op-ed is yeah, is the title of the op-ed was "When We Zim to God's Zum, Sweet Potato Peppers Cascading at the Burning of Dawn." And it just like it just captured like Rob Bell's like ability to say
Yeah,
absolutely nothing in a
yeah.
fakely profound way, and I loved it.
Oh
But
my gosh.
another one that gets me is this is one that I did early on when I started at the Bay was uh, LeBron James and his basketball team wearing special lace collars to commemorate the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg,
I remember
and
that. That was
and
so funny.
the reason I love that one was because it went viral on the left because they thought it was really, really inspiring, and fashion magazines were sharing it, and
Stop. They
um,
thought it was
even
real?
people, a lot of people thought it was real. Like, and you were getting a lot of reshares saying like, "This is the most inspiring thing you'll see today." Like, this is beautiful.
Yeah,
Even
that
after
was one
they
of the
read the
few.
article.
Yeah, that was one of the few times like the left got confused by our article and thought it was a great thing that happened. And yeah, it was like Elle magazine, like the editor in chief of Elle magazine or something was sharing it, and then there was like a foreign New York Times reporter that shared it, and all of them were just talking about how brave and stunning and brave this was.
Oh my good. So when something like that happens at the Babylon Bee office there, what do you guys just all get together and just love, like, just laugh and love that?
It's so great.
Yes,
It's so well.
the funniest
It
thing.
tells
Yeah.
you you're kind of over the target. You know, it's a good indication that you're onto something when when the people think it's real.
Love it.
Yes.
Well, not that we're trying to deceive anybody, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So where do you see Babylon Bee going in the next 5 years? Are you guys gonna be producing more movies, more online video content? What do you think you'll be doing in the next 5 years?
Yeah, we're having all those conversations. It's like we're at an interesting blend where it's like me and Joel, like our job is to write funny jokes, and then at the same time, it's a real business, and you're trying to figure out like how do you run a real business? I don't know. Um, so we're figuring it out. But I think like the movie that we just released January 6th, The Most Deadliest Day, showed a lot of promise, and we got a ton of new subscribers, paying subscribers, people that are just coming alongside us to support us and help us make the next big thing. So I would love, I would love it in 4 or 5 years if you were seeing Babylon Bee movies in the theaters, and Babylon Bee run TV shows, Babylon Bee late night shows. Like the sky's the limit for what we can do to impact culture.
Love it. And what do you want to let people know that you're working on? Of course, we want to let people know about the book, The Babylon Bee Guide to the Apocalypse: How to Survive All the Possible World-Ending Scenarios, from artificial intelligence to zombies. I'm here for the zombies. I love zombies. So what else do you have going on that you want to let people know about?
Yeah, the book, absolutely. That's coming out November 12th, I think, and that's fantastic. It's, well, the fourth book in our guide series. Our new movie, January 6th, Most Deadliest Day. You can go to babylonb.com/January 6th to check that out. And then just people that come alongside us and subscribe are helping to support whatever the next generation of content that we create is. And so this coming year, I think is going to be very exciting for Babylon Bee fans.
All right.
Yeah, and
Anything
I'll
you want to add
reiterate,
there,
make sure
Joel?
you pre-order that book. Yeah, because the world could end at any minute, and you'll lose your
Mm.
chance to buy it, and then you'll be living in the apocalypse without the definitive guide to surviving. So
We can't
get the
have
book
that.
now while you still can.
Yeah, we can't have that. All right. Well, I want to thank my guests, Joel Berry and Kyle Mann from the Babylon Bee. Check out all of those links and all of those places. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe, click the bell icon to be notified every time we release a new video. Share this out on social media. Help us out with those algorithms. And as we pursue Christ, let's remember to keep a sharp mind, a soft heart, and a thick skin. We'll see you next time.